When I think of the Boston Drone Film Festival, I think of this. And this. And even this. All of those flights were incredible, but it's not the type of flying we're going to look at today. Instead,
It wouldn't protect you.
those are FPV racing drones, and they can reach speeds of over 100 miles per hour. As pilots to these aircraft, our feet are planted, but we're fully immersed from behind goggle, maneuvering our drone through a highly technical racetrack. So this workshop, the goal of this workshop is to give you the resources to enter the hobby, whether you want to fly casually or one day professionally. So who am I? My name is Ryan Lindsay Lassard, and I'm an elementary teacher by day and a drone, racing, and freestyle pilot by evening, weekends, and most of the summer too. I started FPV in 2018 with my husband. For lack of better words, we've always been nerds. He introduced me to RC, and we found FPV on YouTube. Videos from pilots like Mr. Steele and Johnny FPV inspired us. We just had to experience FPV for ourselves. So that Christmas, we went out and bought each other tiny whoops, similar to these. These were really great to learn the basic controls. We then discovered that my husband's favorite hobby shop was actually having tiny whoop races. We went to a race and we met pilots from our area. We had countless races in that basement, full of LED gates. Eventually, we were even asked to begin organizing and running the races ourselves. Fast forward to today, and I fly under the handle Mako Reactra. I have more drones than I do shoes, and some of the top RC companies out there are my sponsors, including Cadix FPV and Hobbywing. I build and repair my drones, like this one here, and I've probably been in well over 100 races, including the 2019 and 2020 MultiGP National Championships, where there are only 3 women in attendance. Here's some of my flying. FPV stands for first-person view, and flying under goggles makes drone racing possible. There's an FPV camera in my drone that allows me to fly as if I'm sitting in the pilot's seat. We've raced up to 8 pilots at a time. So in order to make that happen, each drone has to have its own video signal, kind of like a TV or a radio station. And that video signal is sent through the air on a frequency or a channel that you can tune into using your goggles. Each pilot has their own frequency or channel to fly on, so you're not interfering with someone else's flight. But you can tune into anyone's flying by just changing the channel. This is a racing drone. They can cost anywhere between maybe $200 and $400. They can be purchased off the shelf. Companies like Emax, Diatone, and iFlight sell pre-built racing drones, but most racers like to build their own drones. That way they can choose their components and really build it to their liking. We want our drones to be efficient and responsive, so they're really built with aerodynamics in mind. Primarily, there's the drone's weight. A racing drone weighs around 250 grams, so much lighter than a freestyle drone. Racers want their drones lightweight so they can get the highest thrust to weight ratio. We want to be able to accelerate fast, be agile, but also accurate. A heavy drone is going to carry that momentum, and transitions could be more of a challenge. You might overshoot a gate, for example. So we're flying through tight obstacles and making changes quickly, so precision's really important. We save weight by building with lighter components. The carbon fiber frame is a really good example of this. Here's a frame of a lightweight racing drone. Here's the frame of a freestyle drone. You can see the difference. Racing drones are built to minimize drag. You'll also notice that quite a few of them will have a 3D printed pod covering the components. A lighter weight frame tends to come with the cost of durability. You're going to hit gates, you'll probably break an arm. That's why racers tend to choose a frame that isn't a unibody. We'll accept the additional weight of hardware like screws, so that way we'll be able to quickly and easily replace an arm. Crashing, damaging your drone, those are realities. But flight makes it all worth it. Our motto is build, fly, crash, repeat. I sort of mentioned this before, but I wanted to circle back. There's so many different types of drone racing. There's individual racing, team racing. You can race tiny whoops indoors through LED courses. There's tiny trainer races happening. This is becoming increasingly popular. These are being raced in warehouses or parking garages or outside, and they're sort of like a mini DRL quad. You'll see what I mean. And then there's your traditional 5-inch racing. And when I refer to 5 inches, I'm talking about the propeller size. And then there's mega class, and mega class are massive drones, like maybe 13-inch propellers, bigger than that one over there, which has 10-inch propellers. So as you can see, the sport or hobby is always evolving. I wouldn't be surprised if there were new classes of racing in the future. The traditional tiny whoop is smaller at 65 millimeters. It's a ducted drone that flies 1-cell batteries. There are larger whoops out there, 85 millimeters and larger, for example, that fly 2 to 4S batteries. These whoops are much more suited for outdoor flight. Jesse Perkins is the founder of Tiny Whoop. The idea for it was born with his friends back in 2016. He's really brought micro drones with cameras to the mainstream. Now it's a staple in our community, influencing other companies to release their own whoops like Beta FPV and Newbie Drone. I want to remind you that tiny whoops are a great way to learn how to fly. They're less expensive, so bashing them isn't so bad. They also come ready to fly or almost ready to fly. The ducts allow for protection, but also allow you to bounce off of things. Do be careful around people though, because they are hair magnets. I've gotten at least 3 stuck in my hair before. Now, when I'm flying my mini quad outdoors racing, I fly in acro or rate mode. But when I'm racing my tiny whoop, I fly in level or stability mode. I find that I have more control flying in tight spaces in level mode, but pilot preferences are really different. Try it for yourself to see what you like. MultiGP drone racing is the most popular active drone racing league in the world. There are thousands of pilots registered and over 600 race chapters worldwide. MultiGP is grassroots in that it's run by mostly volunteers, people who are dedicated to the love of racing. MultiGP is responsible for more than 95% of all the races worldwide. I know that I wouldn't be racing without MultiGP. I race in chapters all over New England, in Maine, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts. Chapters are free and easy to start. MultiGP has a tiered system 1 through 3. When you begin as a Tier 3 chapter, they'll actually send you race gates and flags. The goal is to get you racing. Chapters may advance and earn more benefits. Tier 1 is the highest level, and this proves that your chapter is a model for others. You can organize and operate races with efficiency. MultiGP provides software and equipment to help chapters run races. We are able to set up races through their website. We can create heats, assign frequencies or channels, and race formats, for example. On race day, we place a sensor at the start-finish gate. This sensor logs lap times and race results. With timing software made for RC, we're able to upload these times live, allowing pilots to be ranked on a leaderboard. Local race chapters will often design their own race tracks. But MultiGP does have some standardized tracks too, like the UTTs, Universal Time Trial Tracks. These tracks are set to spec so that pilots can submit times, be ranked, and therefore compete against each other across the world. The MultiGP Global Qualifier is another track that allows pilots to compete globally. Local chapters can sign up to hold a global qualifier event. The goal is to fly your fastest 3 consecutive laps. These times are also submitted for a global ranking. The top 150 pilots on the Global Qualifier leaderboard are invited to the MultiGP National Championship Pro class. An additional 100 pilots are invited to Sports class. These events are sort of like the Super Bowl of drone racing. The championship has been held in Las Vegas, Daytona Beach, Florida. It's a 3 or 4 day event with practice, qualifying, and finals.
Exit 23.6. Engineer 23.3. Jeep 24.8.
Racing is much more than a need for speed. It's about the pursuit of perfection, practicing over and over until you have the perfect line, and then controlling your nerves during the race so that you come in first.
I love drone racing because everyone pushes each other to redefine the limits of what's possible.
Finally, and perhaps the most important MultiGP event of all, is the MultiGP International Open. This is an annual event that brings hundreds of pilots together from around the world. It takes place in Muncie, Indiana, which is actually the home of RC, where the Academy of Model Aeronautics is, the AMA headquarters. I've attended the last 2 out of 3 international opens, and I can tell you it's an RC enthusiast paradise. The focus is, of course, drone racing with rookie, intermediate, and advanced tracks with qualifying and finals. But the fun doesn't end there. There's powerful mega-class racing.
Dearborn's going to lead the way early on. Jamie trying to close the gap. In the first spot it is Geyser in the double wide trying to make it last till the end. On the far side, Dearborn across the line right now. J-Day in that T-spot. First 1 to 3 laps going to be our champion. Leader
Go Lucas.
now is Dearborn. J-Day in the 2 spot. Geyser running third, 2 laps in the books for Dearborn already. Here comes J-Day across the line in the 2 spot. Geyser trying to close the gap on J-Day. He'd like to climb up the ladder. 1 more position. Checkers or wreckers. Our leader is down. J-Day is down. Geyser still in the air from third on the spot. Working his way around, surviving the finish. J-Day down as well. That is going to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. X-Class Racing.
Team racing, a freestyle area, wing racing, and even tiny whooping after dark. Don't be surprised if you also see a few helicopters and RC trucks.
I think one, because it's a lot of fun. Basically, going for a drone race is like going to a festival. There's a lot of tents, fun, grills, and stuff like this. So it's always a lot of fun with the community. And this is actually too community, because everyone is super awesome, super supportive, and it's just amazing feeling to be with like-minded people for an entire weekend racing. Free accomplishment, because yes, we are winning the races, we are getting the trophies, we are getting the medals, and we have this feeling of an accomplishment that we did kicked asses. And four, it's basically like a cardio, because whenever I fly, my heart rate is going so much up, and I always get to know what I need to work with and how to work with my nerves. So I think those are the reasons why I'm racing.
Still unsure whether or not you want to race? Let me take you through the typical race day. Gear check. Make sure to do this the night before, because there's nothing worse than waking up in the morning, the day of the drone race, and trying to find what you need or charge things. Do it the night before. Inspect your quad. Double check that your screws are tight, that your solder joints and your wiring look good. Also, test fly your quad. You can put it on the correct frequency or channel and double check your power level too. Then there's charging. You have to charge your drone lipos, your transmitter, and your goggles too. I like to pack everything up the night before. I typically will bring a fold-out table to put things on and a chair. Most MultiGP races require an Academy of Model Aeronautics membership. The AMA is the longest-standing RC club in the country, with over 200,000 members. The association represents all RC aeronautical hobbies, not just drones. The AMA sanctions races, provides insurance, assists with securing flying sites, and provides representation and education to modelers. Your fellow race pilots and chapter organizers will really appreciate it if you come early to help set up the track. Once you're ready to fly, the race director will review race expectations and take you on a course walk. This is your opportunity to learn the course. Think about the lines you'll fly as you walk it.
And what we want to do is go right. There was a bird's nest. Oh, okay. For this gate, you're going to go top, split S. Down through the bottom, to the left side of this flag, around the outside, and just going over the top, through the top, through over the top. Whatever you think is faster for you.
Another way to learn the track besides a course walk is to watch others fly. Especially if you're not in that first round, take the opportunity to get under goggle, put your hands on the sticks, and actually do the movements as if you're flying. It will help you remember the track and better lines. You'll also get a few practice rounds before the race starts. Use those to your advantage too. You'll be assigned a group of pilots to fly with. This is called a heat. The heats take turns flying 5 to 10 race rounds. The pilots fly in a designated area called a pilot station. That way they're close to the race director for optimal communication. One tip you'll hear time and time again is never plug your drone in at a race unless it's your turn to fly. If you plug in and you're on someone's channel who happens to be racing, they will most likely lose video and probably crash. After the pilots are seated in the pilot station, the race director will say goggles down, thumbs up for good video. If everything is good, we'll then be asked to arm our quads and we'll be starting in less than 5. So randomly a tone will go off 1 to 5 seconds. We'll be able to start at that point. It's randomized so that we don't anticipate when to start.
Pilots, goggles down, thumbs up for good video. 1, 2, and 3. Pilots, arm your quads. 5 on the phone.
Race rounds are typically 2 minutes in length, but the format of a race can really vary. Some chapters use an aggregate format where the most laps, sum of all the rounds, wins. Other chapters like to rank their pilots by their top 3 consecutive laps. Some chapters use spotters. These are other pilots that watch racers under goggles. They're watching to count laps and to ensure accuracy, making sure that you're going through the correct gate in the correct order. Some chapters don't actually have timing systems, so they have to manually count laps and enter race results. At the end of a race round, make sure to land in the designated landing area. Unfortunately, you're not always going to make it there. You're going to crash out or midair, meaning you're going to hit another drone. If you crash out during a race, you can try to use something called turtle or Koopa mode. You program your drone to change modes so then it can right itself. The propellers will change directions and push you right side up. Move your right stick in the direction you want to flip over.
Finish him. Fatality.
Some pilots attach a 3D printed fin to the top of their drones to allow the propellers to spin more freely while the drone's upside down. Watch and learn from other pilots, but remember to fly your own race. Try to think one gate ahead for a cleaner line. Remember, faster isn't always faster if you're overshooting elements. Smooth is fast, so try to look through the gate and not at it. Much of drone racing is mental because it takes such intense focus. It's not uncommon to hear about pilots having shaky fingers, especially when starting out. Having a clear head really helps with reaction time because as soon as I lose focus, that's when I hit a gate. Get a good night's sleep the night before because race day is a full day event. Bring snacks, stay hydrated, and make time for lunch and other RC fun.
Supposed to be doing that for this race, so watch me get started.
There you go.
Laser 19.8 and third.
When the race day is complete, don't forget to congratulate the winners, thank your race director and organizers, and help tear down the course.
Hi, my name is Beckett, but most people know me by my racer name Neukel. For me, drone racing is about the sense of community, and also the sense of self-improvement you get. I love that I can see my practice paying off every time I fly, and noticing improvement is a huge motivator for me to keep going. I've also made some amazing friends through my time in racing. Everyone in the racing community I've ever met was super nice and super generous to me. If I break my gear, like I always seem to do, there's always somebody there willing to help out fixing my quads or get me a spare part or anything I need to get back on the track. It's a really amazing sense of community, and I really love that part of drone racing. If you ever need something, people have your back.
Drone racing has come so far in such a short amount of time, and there's so much more on the horizon. There are even some race chapters experimenting with pilots flying the digital HD systems. As tech improves, I wouldn't be surprised if we see this fully implemented in the race scene. 3 flags or 3 gates can be arranged in a slalom. To create a slalom, put them 5 to 15 feet apart in a straight line or stagger them in a zigzag pattern. Just like the skiing slalom, you'll alternate shifting left and right through the flags. Gates can be used to build towers. If they're 2 gates high, they're commonly used for something called a split S or reverse split S. A split S gate forces a pilot over the gate and not around the side. Once over the gate, you'll drop down and go through the bottom. In a reverse split S, you'll go through the bottom and then elevate up to go through the top gate. If the tower is 3 gates high, it's considered a ladder, in which you can spiral up or down, going through the gates in the same direction, trying to hold roll and yaw to maintain your turn. A corkscrew is made up of a line of usually 2 to 3 gates. You enter the same direction through all the gates, and with practice, you can develop sort of a corkscrew motion. This element is hard to learn, requiring so much control, mixing roll, yaw, and pitch. A dive gate is angled slightly for entry and elevated about 15 feet above the ground. A launch gate forces the pilot to launch up through it. A hurdle slows down a racer, forcing them to change elevation, usually dropping into a gate after. Practicing these elements separately can help you fly faster once they're in a full track. Not all MultiGP races are in a field with gates and flags. I've been to some unique locations to race. I've flown tiny whoops in a movie theater, and I've flown my mini quad in a mine. Both natural and man-made elements can be incorporated into drone races. The race at the mine reminds me a lot of the professional drone racing leagues, like DRL, the Drone Racing League, and DCL, Drone Champions League. Let's start with DRL, Drone Racing League. It hosts some of the most elite pilots from all over the world. Maybe you've heard of Heads Up FPV, Captain Vanover, or Gab 707. At each level, pilots earn points based upon their standing, and then they compete in a final to crown the DRL champion. They all fly a custom DRL Racer 4. It's a 1,000-gram drone with 7-inch propellers, and they fly it through a technical neon-lit course. The DRL Racer 4 can be built in under 15 minutes, and they actually bring 600 to each race. Now let's move on to DCL, the Drone Champions League, which is similar to DRL but focuses on team racing. Each team follows specific guidelines to engineer their own custom DCL drone, therefore making the competition really more than just about flight skill. Teams earn points in qualifying, and the top teams go to the Drone Grand Prix to determine a winner.
Right, we know only one more close there game to go, and into the crashing.
As you can see, there's a big difference between the drones flown in these leagues and the drones I fly. Production value is way more important in these professional global drone racing leagues. The drones are outfitted with LEDs in their team or pilot color. I mean, the Racer 4 has 900 LED pixels. It's been called a flying billboard. These drones also carry HD cameras while they race because footage is more important. Seeing the drone is important because there's an audience. Now both DRL and DCL have moved to competing virtually through their drone racing simulators, DRL Sim and DCL The Game. Both of these sims can be played on PC as well as Xbox One. In the past, both sims have also had tryout tracks that allowed them to draft new professional pilots.
Why drone racing? I mean, drone racing is the sport of the future. Where else do you combine technology, high-speed performance, these crazy machines that people can literally build and fly out of nothing and compete at the highest level racing through stadiums in 3D space or, anywhere your imagination can come up with somewhere to fly? My favorite part about drone racing is that we're not limited to the ground. We have the ability to just use our imagination and get up in the sky and build a course literally anywhere, anytime. So you're ready to throw down, let's freaking go. So drone racing is just, it opens you up to this world of freedom that you never had before, and to bring people in and to let people race in 3 dimensions and become a bird and become part of something bigger than themselves is why drone racing is important to me.
Flying FPV racing drones is actually really hard. It takes a lot of stick time to fly confidently. So here are some tips. One way I like to practice is setting up certain track elements, especially those elements that I'm having trouble with in a race, because I can fly pack after pack after pack practicing it. Make sure you practice both rights and lefts so you have the comfort going both directions. You can also fly a course in reverse to get that practice. Make sure to push yourself harder in practice when it's okay to crash. Practice gates can also be purchased or made. Making them is less expensive, and there are lots of YouTube videos to show you the different ways you can do it. I slid foam noodles over a PVC pipe and then hammered rebar into the ground to hold the gate upright. I now have a collection of homemade gates, including a tower and a dive gate. You can purchase gate panels and flags through MultiGP, FPVGates.com, or Speedy Pizza Drones. Another way to improve your flying is to watch your DVR. That way you can pinpoint the elements that are most challenging for you and where you're losing those precious seconds. Taking the time to experiment with your drone's rates may also improve your racing. Softwares like Betaflight and Flight 1's Falco X allow you to select different rate profiles, but also to customize them to your liking. Racers tend to fly lower rates though, in the 300 to 500 degrees per second range on all axes. This gives us greater control of our drone. Every pilot and drone is different though, so find the feel that's right for you. Flying a drone simulator is a great way to learn the basic controls, practice your lines, and develop muscle memory for a track. You can fly live with other pilots or solo. It's fun to see where you end up on the leaderboard. MultiGP has actually partnered with Velocidrone Simulator. That means you can fly the tracks online before you do in real life, like the national tracks, the global qualifiers, and the UTTs. In a drone simulator like Velocidrone, DRL, and DCL the game, you can push yourself harder than in real life. You can crash drone after drone after drone, and you're back up in the air in an instant. You don't have to take the time to walk to find your drone, fix it if it's broken, charge batteries, or wait for other pilots to fly. You can fly so many more batteries in the same amount of time. If you want to get better at racing, you really do want a sim with the transmitter that you fly with. You can connect that to your sim using a USB plug or a wireless simulator adapter. If you use an adapter, you'll just need to bind or connect it to your transmitter, like you would your drone. Then you can calibrate your controls within the game and you're ready to play. An important thing to make sure of is that your computer meets the minimum hardware requirements before you download a sim. Maintaining and repairing your drones is essential as a drone racer, so here are some of the tools we use. The tools we use include a soldering iron, an assortment of screwdrivers and nut drivers, wire cutters, prop removers, a heat gun, a multimeter, and much more. One of the most important tools we use is a soldering iron. We solder a lot. The motors alone are 12 solder joints. Soldering can be tough, so I recommend you practice on bad parts. You can also use flux to make soldering a little bit easier. Some companies offer more plug-and-play options now, so there's less soldering that needs to be done when building a drone. Knowing your drone's components is important. They all have instructional manuals, and many have pinouts that help you correctly wire your drone. Also make time to learn the software your drone runs. You'll have to use it to set up, tune, and maintain your drone. There are often firmware updates that add new features and change existing ones, potentially impacting how your drone flies. You might be wondering more about the gear you need to drone race. First, there's the radio or transmitter, and this choice impacts the receiver you'll have in your drone. For example, if you have an FR Sky radio, you'll need an FR Sky receiver. If you use the TBS Tango 2, you'll need a Crossfire receiver. If you use the Spectrum radios, you'll need DSMX receivers. So it's important to make sure that your transmitter and drone receivers are compatible. With changing technology, companies are going multi-protocol. That means that you can make modifications and fly drones with different receivers. Radio Master RC, for example, has been making multi-protocol radios for some time now. As you can see, radios or transmitters come in different sizes. Some can be smaller, like gaming controllers, like this Tango 2. They also come with a variety of sticks or gimbals, and Hall gimbals are supposed to be some of the best because they allow for more precision. In my opinion, goggles are the most important item to purchase. When I first started, I purchased a less expensive pair of goggles because I wasn't sure how far I was going to go in this hobby. And at my first Tiny Whoop race, I borrowed a higher end pair from another pilot and cut my lap times in half. Needless to say, I went home and ordered a new pair of goggles right away. Having a spare set of goggles is awesome because you can let others watch you fly. This is called giving a ride along. I ended up selling my original pair of goggles. Another awesome thing about FPV is there's a market for used gear. I mentioned this before, but goggles need a receiver to receive analog video. Some have them built in, but some have a module bay where you install one. A few examples of modules include the Immersion RC Rapid Fire, which I have here, and the TBS Fusion. The antenna can come left-hand or right-hand polarized, and you want to make sure whatever you have on your goggles matches the antenna on your drone. So right-hand, left-hand, left-hand. At some bigger drone racing events where there are more pilots flying together, some may be flying right-hand and some may fly left-hand, so it may be good to have both. This is a video transmitter, or VTX. This one is nano in size because remember, when we're building a racing drone, we're building with smaller components. We have less space. So this VTX, coupled with the antenna on the drone, transmit the video from my FPV camera to my goggles. As racers, we all set our VTXs to the same setting, 25 milliwatt. This is the lowest power level because we'll be flying in a designated area, but also with other pilots, so we don't want to interfere with their video. There are also two varieties of goggles, box and modern. Box goggles have one screen that's generally 4 to 8 inches in size. They're less expensive, so a lot of pilots will start out using them. However, many prefer the more modern FPV goggle, like the Fat Sharks, Orcas, or Sky Zones. They fit better and typically weigh less. Most modern high-end goggles are comprised of 2 OLED screens that allow for better contrast, better color, pixelation, and even less image distortion. Most goggles have adjustments to allow for focus and eye position to suit an individual's vision. The goggle faceplate has a fan which eliminates fogging. This helps during hot summer races. Another feature that many goggles have is an onboard DVR. The video feed is recorded onto an SD card. This is helpful during racing since DVR is sometimes reviewed in a close race. If you crash your drone and can't find it, you can also use your DVR to see where it may have landed. Be careful that you do not leave your goggles out in the sun because the rays can burn out your screens. There are cases and 3D printed lens covers that are really useful. When building or purchasing a drone, you'll need to consider the flight controller and electronic speed controller to run. The FC or flight controller is sort of the drone's brain. It has built-in sensors and software to help orient it. I can connect it to my computer to help program and tune my drone. Depending on your flight controller, though, you'll be using certain software. The most common softwares include Betaflight, Flight 1 Falco X, KISS, and EMU Flight. Though I would say most race pilots fly either Betaflight or Flight 1 Falco X. The FC tells the ESC, or electronic speed controller, and motors when to run and at what RPM. ESCs come in different sizes and configurations. Racers generally use 4-in-1 ESCs, but they also come individually and can be placed on each arm. For motors, you'll need to choose a size and kV, which impacts the battery and propeller you'll end up flying. For racing, I prefer a 2207 motor size. This motor is fairly heavy and powerful with great torque. There are usually 2 to 3 kV options for 4 to 6S. Many racers have shifted to flying 6S from 4S, so they'll choose a lower kV motor. Some of the most popular FPV camera companies include Cadix, RunCam, and Foxeer, and they design cameras for both freestyle and racing. Racing FPV cameras, though, are focused more on latency than video quality. Racers want the smallest delay possible so that they can accurately fly a track. When traveling at race speeds, a lower latency camera can mean the difference between smacking into a gate or making it. Many FPV racing cams are down to 4 milliseconds. Race pilots mount their cams at a specific angle, often 45 to 50 degrees. Drone propellers are manufactured in different sizes. They are determined by a 4-digit number. The first 2 numbers are the size and the second 2 numbers are the pitch. For example, the 5148s have a propeller diameter of 5.1 inches and a pitch of 3.8. Lower pitch props are generally preferred by racers, but it really depends on your drone build. Try different props to see what's right for you. I know that we're always sharing props at the race tent, so trade with friends. Now, batteries. We use lithium polymer LiPo batteries that range from 1 to 6 cells. Each cell has 3.7 volts or 4.2 volts fully charged. The more cells you have, the greater the volts and the greater the power. The battery's capacity is measured in milliamp hours, mAh. This determines how long the drone flies. Higher mAh will provide a longer flight time, though flight time isn't always important to racers since we're typically flying 2-minute races. 1,000 to 1,500 mAh are common. I fly 1,300 mAh batteries. Batteries also have a C rating, which is the amount of current a battery produces. The higher the C rating, the higher the maximum current. 60 to 100 C are common ratings. Remember, battery voltage impacts motor performance. A higher kV motor is paired with a lower cell battery, and a lower kV motor is typically paired with a higher cell battery. For example, I fly 4 and 5S on these 2450 kV motors and 6S on these 1720 kV motors. The drone battery is a heavy component to be adding, so consider carefully. So you might be wondering, what's the best way to get started in drone racing? First, go to multigp.com and find a race chapter near you. Even if you don't want to race, but just want to get into FPV, this will help you find local pilots and places to fly. Remember, you can fly a Tiny Whoop. These are great starter drones since they're safer, lower in cost, and a bit easier to fly. You can build your own or purchase one ready or almost ready to fly. Finally, there's a wealth of knowledge online. Watch videos on YouTube, read articles, and join Facebook and Discord groups. Both Oscar Lang and Joshua Bardwell are also huge resources in the FPV community, so make sure to check them out. I've included all my social media links as well as my email if you have any more questions or want to chat FPV drone racing.